Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you all, sisters, brothers, and everybody joining us here on Newcastle Fast FM. Welcome to Reminders. SubhanAllah, can you believe it? We are into the ninth day of Ramadan already. Doesn't feel like a week ago was my first show, and it is a pleasure and a delight to be running this show for you again. This Asr time, nearly evening, mid evening. I don't know quite what the expression is for this time, but it is, it's a lovely day here in Newcastle. And today we are talking to a lady from Marie Curie, a particular lady called Louise Bowen. Hello, Louise.
Hi, Wajid. Lovely to speak with you tonight.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, and I
My
appreciate it's a
pleasure.
bit late. So just for our listeners, for the benefit of our listeners, Louise works for Marie Curie, and they support people who have cancer. Marie Curie has been around for many years, and it's based on the lady who worked out um, the radioactive stuff. That's the technical term I'm using there. But yeah, so it's named after her great scientific work around
Mm,
radioactivity and radioactive isotopes and those sort of things.
that's right.
Louise and I met a couple of weeks ago now, a few weeks ago, just before Ramadan, where I was running some training and Louise was there. And I just thought it would help you as our viewers and our listeners, not just here in Newcastle, but also in the UK, to know a little bit, well, Louise, interesting character herself, but also what the actual trust, the charity does for the benefit of the people. And I think it would be good for you. And for those of you who are tuning outside of the UK as well, I think it'd be interesting for you to see kind of what goes on here in the UK as well when we talk about our NHS and our support services and why we are fighting for them to keep them as best funded and running as best as we can. So, with that introduction, what I'd first say to you is if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the chat and we will try and see to them as best we can. Otherwise, I'm going to go straight into it. And how are you today, Louise?
I'm good. I mean, the weather's wonderful, isn't it? That really helps lift the spirits, I think. It's really great as well to get the opportunity to do this tonight, to talk to you and all of the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm based at the Marie Curie Hospice in Newcastle. And just to say, Marie Curie doesn't just offer support with cancer care, it's for all end of life conditions and support for people at end of life and their families, whatever their illness is.
Mhm. Wow, that's a lot. I mean, just for the benefit of our listeners and viewers, could you just tell us what the difference is, what the word hospice actually means? Because it means something completely different to a hospital, isn't it?
It is. We're specialists in end of life care. So people can come to us at end of life and be supported with things like pain management. Their families can be supported. Um, and quite often people come to us for respite, for temporary support, and then they're able to go back home with say their pain better managed so that they can cope better at home. And we also have a community nursing team, Marie Curie nursing team, who can support people at end of life in their own homes as well. So we do lots of things, and it's not all based at the hospice anymore as well,
Right.
because we've started to offer support out into the community. So frequently you don't need to have had any previous contact with the hospice to get some support from Marie Curie in Newcastle.
Mhm. And what, so what's your role then, Louise, in supporting this kind of work?
Okay, so I'm COVID bereavement coordinator at the hospice. So I
Right.
offer support to people who've been bereaved during the pandemic, whether the cause of death, the loss of their loved one has been due to COVID or any other cause, because we recognise that the pandemic, any time is a really difficult time to be bereaved, but particularly during the pandemic, it's been so difficult for people with all of the restrictions, how they've affected bereavement and funerals and so on.
Yeah, I mean it's such a challenging time, and there's so much going on, isn't there, Louise? You know, there's when we look at the compounding of issues, isn't it? There's just so much going on, and it's especially when it comes to sort of, you've mentioned end of life and supporting people through bereavement. I can't imagine it, and it must be very, very challenging for families who are going through this in such a sort of in a lockdown process,
Yeah. I think it is. I think grief turns your world upside down, and all those familiar anchoring points that we would have had in a time other than the pandemic, all those have been affected. So people have been forced to dig very deep into their own resources, and sometimes a little bit of extra support goes a long way, and that's exactly why my service is here in terms of supporting people.
Yeah. Salam to Fatuma, and salam to Stillness, and salam to Ifat. Thank you for joining us this evening. Yeah. So, Louise, when we talk about this process, what got you into this role? Where have you sort of come from into this?
Well, I've worked as a counsellor for a long time, over 25 years now, and worked with grief and loss a lot during those years. Worked a lot with the NHS, worked with a major charity previously as well in a research role, and run a small private practice. I saw the role advertised at Marie Curie in the Newcastle Evening Chronicle, and honestly, it was like it was lit up in neon for me. I just felt that it would be such a good opportunity to bring my skills together so that I could feel that I was helping during the pandemic. I'd been looking for a way to get involved, and this seemed like the ideal opportunity. And I was lucky enough to get the job. And it's been a very strange time to start a new job, particularly at the hospice, which is usually a very lively, warm, friendly place with families and children visiting. And it was very quiet at the hospice, but I've had fantastic support from the team there in setting up this new service. So it's been very good. And it's been a blessing to have that kind of discipline and focus during the pandemic. I think it would have been a very different experience for me if I wasn't so busy. It's been a distraction, really, in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Louise, from your experience, because just going with the cliche as we are British and that stiff upper lip, and we don't tend to talk about these sort of things as openly as we probably should. And I say that because, like, from your experience, how does it help people when they sort of open up about these things?
I think it can help people feel a lot less alone. I think it's a conversation that really needs to happen, because death is a part of life. It happens to all of us. And somehow we go through life trying to pretend quite often that it doesn't happen. And it can be the most challenging thing when we lose somebody, or when somebody around us is bereaved, and we can sometimes not always know what to say and feel awkward and a bit fearful that that what we say to somebody is going to be upsetting for them. And, I hear literally that people cross to the other side of the street, right, to avoid talking to somebody who's been bereaved. And that can be very hurtful for the bereaved person, and they can feel very isolated with their grief. So I think the more at ease we all become with talking about death and dying, because it's a normal part of life, and grief is a normal, natural process, if a very painful one. I think that's for the benefit for everybody, really.
Yeah, I can understand what you mean about it being come quite isolatory. You can kind of feel very alone. Yeah, and I think it's at those points that we really need that that comfort of human support, really, isn't it? People around us knowing that is there. Yeah, I think also, I mean, just from the Muslim community as well. When somebody does pass away in our community here in Newcastle, depending how the contacts are, I might get a message, or my mum usually rings me and says, "Oh, there's a funeral at the mosque," and depending what time it is, I'll do my best to get there. And I suppose we all have like different rituals or different ways that we have these sort of comings together, but ultimately it's still about that social element, though, isn't it, Louise? And
of course, I think it's a time when we're bereaved that we need people around us. We need family. We need contact. We need a hug. And I think the pandemic has made all that so much more difficult. And I think it's struck at the heart of what it means to be human, in terms of us being able to connect with each other. And that's when things like new technologies have been really helpful. And it's I think the pandemic has given us at Marie Curie real impetus to explore that, so that we're able to offer support over the telephone, which isn't recent technology, but certainly online via Teams or I think that's been really helpful. And I think going forward, to stay connected with as many people as possible, I think that kind of offer encompassing those things is going to be very helpful.
Yeah. So, Louise, with things moving online, that must have come with some, like, I know a lot of people have been able to adapt and work online, but when you're providing counseling and support through this kind of process, that's quite a lot of adaptation. How have you gone through that process of adapting?
It is. It's something that, even a couple of years ago, I would never have seen myself doing, because for me, it's very much the way that I work is very holistic. It's about how somebody is in the room, and picking up all those sort of non-verbal clues and working very gently and respectfully with those. But to work online, it's different, but it's better than nothing. In fact, it's much better than nothing. And I think I found that you can still make a very good connection with somebody and work very well therapeutically with them online.
Right. I've just had a question coming from one of our viewers. Stillness Speak is asking if you do ACT therapy, ACT. I'm not sure if that means anything to you.
Yes, I have heard of it. That's not something that's in my repertoire. I'm a humanistic integrative practitioner, counsellor. So we offer counselling, and we also offer bereavement support in terms of active supportive listening from our trained bereavement support volunteers. So I'm not so familiar with that myself. That's not a way in which I work.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think it's just the curiosity of one of our viewers. Thank you for sharing that question with the stillness.
Yeah, curiosity is
Yeah.
one for that.
Yeah. Because I think one of the things that, like, when you're having a normal conversation face to face, and especially when it's about sensitive issues, there are moments where people pause. There's those moments where you have those comfortable silences, or at least moments of reflection, introspection before we carry on those conversations. And I'm just thinking how that, I don't know, does that get removed when you're doing stuff online? Does it bring a whole different way of being able to read people's body language, like you said, sort of, those little things that you pick up through intuition and experience of having and communicating with people?
I think it's still possible to pick those up, and it's
Wow.
possible to
Okay.
pick those up on the telephone as well. It's important, as you say, to leave space in the conversation for those, because a lot can happen in those silences. A lot of the healing can happen. Working online is different. I think there's a time lag very often, and that sense of timing, I think you need to make an adjustment so that you're not talking over somebody. And again, just giving time for giving space for those silences, and not rushing in, perhaps slowing the conversation down a little bit, particularly when you're working online with somebody. And then there are all the sort of technological issues of, the contact dropping, and that hasn't happened too much, though, fortunately. It has happened, but there's always ways around that, and we can always resume a session's contact over the telephone if needs be. But yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine it being quite some challenge, but like you said, it's adapting quickly, isn't it? Because that's just the current situation,
That's
the way
right.
it
I
is.
think it's just being flexible. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember I noticed in some of the material that you do have that it's more than just around that bereavement process. You also look at I can talk about, like, so the art therapy and the emotional well-being that you sort of look at and explore as well. Is that so do you work with the individual, and how do you then link with the family then?
We don't just work with the individual. We also work with carers, and we offer group support as well. So there's a wide range of what's on offer at Marie Curie. There's my service, which is the COVID bereavement service, for anybody who's been bereaved during the course of the pandemic in the community in the Northeast who's looking for support. But we also, there's a lot of expertise at the hospice as regards working with people, supporting people with end of life care needs, people with a chronic illness who need support. And we do offer support to them and their carers and their families. And as you say, we offer emotional support, art therapy, occupational therapy, dietary advice, physiotherapy. So there's a broad range. And if you want to find out more, then you simply need to contact us at the Newcastle Hospice, and we'd be glad to have a chat and let you know more about what we offer.
Mm-hmm. There's one the thing that you've said, that occupational therapy. What is that? Because that sounds to me like somebody who helps you get a job, but obviously it's not.
Yeah.
So an occupational therapist, what is that?
Do you know, it's not my area, so one of our wonderful occupational therapists could answer that
Could answer that a bit better. Okay.
much better than me.
Yeah.
I think Wajid.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Yeah. Walaikum assalam to Sister Samira, who's just tuned in. Thank you for joining the show. And walaikum assalam to Khadija as well. Thank you very much for tuning in again. Walaikum assalam, Fatima, and salam to you as well. And salam to Jiru. Just as the messages pop up, fantastic. And so I think Stillness wants to know kind of what your background is really. BACP registered. I'm presuming you would have to be registered because that is a thing in the UK. Stillness, I'm not sure where you're contacting us from. Let us know where you are, whether you're in the UK or outside. Let us know where you're dialing in from. But yeah, so just more about your background. Like how did you get into therapy and sort of counselling and this sort of support?
Long story. I was working in mental health in Northumberland and was looking to do a further training. Way back in the day, I trained as a teacher. I was looking to do further training. I was looking for something really that brought my head and my heart together. So this seemed to be a very well-rounded holistic way of working as a counsellor, and it's also something that I can bring my love of working with words to, and I'm always curious about people's stories, about people's lives. That's why I was saying before, curiosity can be a really, really good thing and open things up. So yes, I started my counselling training, and there was a fit. I felt it was right for me, and worked a lot with the NHS since. But yes, I do love my work, which is, it's great. It's helped keep me going, and that professional identity has been a good support for me, particularly over the last year when it's been very difficult for everybody.
It has been, Louise, it has. And I'm just sort of thinking, who supports you then? What do you do to sort of, because these are very challenging, hard conversations to have. And you and the team will need, and will continue to have that emotional strength to be able to have those discussions. Because you can get curious and find out these things, but they're telling you some intimate and very hard-hitting things.
Absolutely.
And facing certain realities that aren't easy conversations, really.
Yeah, that's right. And it's often the details in people's stories that really impact me. I work with a wonderful staff team. I've worked closely with my colleagues at the hospice. And I have my own supervision. So every month I will spend time with my supervisor and bring any questions or thoughts or feelings that are troubling me and that I need support with to my supervision. And self-care for me, like it has been for everybody in the pandemic, has become really even more important than ever. So just going out in the garden and smelling what's blooming and going for a walk or getting down onto the beach or giving myself time and space in that way has been really important. And I write as well. I write poetry, and I've been increasingly doing that over the course of the last year or so. And that's really good to sort of help work things through.
Yeah, wow, that's really again bringing your love of words into a different format. Yeah, fantastic. That's great. And just what you've said there, because as Muslims, we're in Ramadan now, and there's a lot of planning that goes into prepping our days and so on and so forth, and it's challenging enough as somebody who's healthy, and again, not taking care of anybody in that particular scenario. But I think there's an impact on the family that has to provide that support and see the impact on a loved one in that particular way, Louise. And there's the ways that you show people how to cope. Is there like mechanisms that you teach them, or is there like just like a process they have to go through?
I think it's a bit of both, really, isn't it? I think it is a process that they have to go through, but I think it's important that they know that they don't have to go through that alone, that there is support available. So yeah, I think that self-care is very important. And I think having support from, sometimes with the best will in the world, it's difficult for families to provide all of that support, particularly when it's getting into areas that might be more specialized because of the needs of the person who's unwell. So that's when, places like Marie Curie and other agencies can be super helpful.
Yeah, and it's about that respite, isn't it? It's about giving people that space to recuperate and to come
recharge.
back at it. Yeah, recharge. That's a great word. Yeah. I have a lot of respect for what you do, Louise, because like I said, it's way beyond my emotional tenacity to even consider it. And I think it's something that evokes a lot of emotion. And I think for me, it's these kind of roles where you need that strength to be able to, at least figuratively, leave your work at work and go home without taking that with you. If that makes sense. And you know it. Like I said, it's not something that I just want to quickly say salam to Parsa and Ian. Thank you for joining the conversation today. And Ifat as well. Wa alaikum salam. It's been able to connect with humans, isn't it? I think that's what it is. So Stillness Speaks is saying that he worked. I'm assuming it's a he. Forgive me, Stillness. I can't really tell. But it's Stillness is saying that they work in mental health as well. So I think that's why they're just asking to sort of they do CBT. Okay, so that's their mode of practice. So Stillness, thank you for sharing. Appreciate that.
Fantastic. We have CBT on offer at the hospice as well.
Yeah. It's one of the forms of therapy that you use. And so I think just in a way, I suppose, when families are going through this, the situation is very acute and very sort of immediate. And given the support, I mean, just sort of like you said, people can come to a hospice. How do they get referred? Do they have to be referred? Can they self-refer? What's the process they go through?
We've wanted to make it as easy as possible for people, particularly during the pandemic, because it's not always easy to get a health appointment and have that conversation with your GP who can refer you. They all have the information about our services in the Northeast. But it's as easy as just giving the hospice in Newcastle a call, and that's on 019 1219 1000, and just asking to speak to me, Louise Bowen, if it's for COVID bereavement support, or we have our virtual consultations support, and that would be through talking to Lynn Alberts at the hospice. And we also have links available online on our Newcastle Hospice Marie Curie website.
Yeah, and sort of just thinking about, the way things are again. Like I said, many of us are fasting, but there'll be some people, like for example, my mom, you'd be a brave person to tell her not to fast. A very brave person. And then I think that's across the board. But I think that generation was a bit more resilient and sturdier than we are, certainly, than I am, certainly. But there's a sense of vulnerability that comes from this kind of work. And I think it's about providing support for individuals and for families so they don't feel, like you said, it's not about allowing them to feel that loneliness, and to give them that support in that particular way. And as a Muslim community, we are quite open about talking about death, in the sense of, having a will, the rituals that go through with it, and the sort of the community sense that comes together. As I was saying earlier, that the community really sort of, like, you can have 200 people attend a funeral, because they'll all turn up and attend, and that's just how the funerals are done, which is different to, I suppose, the British culture kind of process to it. But having that support around you really, really gives you a lot of strength. And of late, that's not been the way. I mean, we've seen, the death of Prince Philip and only 30 people attending the funeral, Queen standing on her own.
I know, so poignant. But representative of what many people's experience has been during the pandemic. Yeah,
that's very much so representative of kind of what's been happening. And and so if, let's say, somebody is going through that process, they can just contact yourselves. And then what's the process you go through? Is it just like as long as the support is needed? Do you have like a 6-week kind of thing, or what's the conversation that happens?
Well, we recognise that grief can be a long process. So we're fortunate in that we can provide support over a longer period than other agencies. Sometimes in the NHS, the support, because of the level of demand, there's more of a limit on the length of time for involvement. So we can offer monthly bereavement support calls, for a year or so, or we can offer weekly counselling depending on the level of need. And we would say offer 8 sessions and then review, and then add a few more on. The same again if needed, and then maybe move to monthly bereavement support phone calls. So it's very much according to the person's need.
Yeah, so it's very sort of patient-centric, tailored to what the requirements are. That's wonderful. It's like I said, I don't know. I find it, a lot of respect for what you people do. And from your experience then, Louise, do you find that there are certain things that come up in those conversations quite often?
I do, and particularly over the last year, I think shock, particularly in the early stages of grief, even when the loss of that person has been anticipated, the reality of it happening still comes as a shock, because it's irrevocable, and all of those changes. Sometimes when the bereaved person has been a carer, there's real changes in terms of their identity and how they're going to be in the world going forward. So those are some of the themes that emerge. But I think very often it's giving reassurance that that person can be in your heart ongoing, and the relationship with them in that way, because even though they're not physically present, they're still in your thoughts, and you know that there's still a point of reference for you going forward.
Yeah, and like you said, it can shift your identity. Stillness, thank you for responding. And Stillness speaks is saying, "I'm a male. There is a need for more Muslim males in mental health. The Muslim community needs more awareness around mental health. However, every Muslim practitioner I know is doing their part." Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Stillness. And it's so true, you know, that we when we talked about self-care, you know, and so it's about you know, being able to do that, and even at a lower level, if that makes sense. So that you have a something that, you know, you go through a bereavement. This is a huge thing that goes in your life, losing a loved one. But then even those who are otherwise, it's that self-care and that understanding of what mental health is, and approaching it in a way of like you said, you know, what you do for your own self, in sense of taking care of yourself, but actually talking to other people and just making sure that everything kind of takes its natural course and moves on.
Yeah, very much a natural process, as I say, but yeah, a painful one, and one with which support is often, a bit of extra support is often helpful. And it's important to know it's okay to ask for support. I think people can sometimes give themselves a hard time when they're grieving and think, am I doing it right? Am I thinking of the person who I loved, still love, and have lost? Am I thinking about them enough? Am I not thinking about them enough? And there's no right or wrong way to grieve. It's very individual.
Yeah, it's very true. And I think, I think, I mean, I'm very proud of my British identity. Wa alaikum salam, Farhan. Thank you for joining us, and peace to you too. Wa alaikum salam to Saudi English. And may Allah make it, Fatima is saying, may Allah make it easy for those who are suffering this COVID season. Yeah, thank you. And just sorry, just what you said there, Louise, in the sense of, no, lost my train of thought. Sorry, messages have disrupted me. It's getting a bit late in towards the evening. My apologies. My apologies.
Not so.
But yeah, but I suppose we were looking at this idea of self-care, and that it's about the daily habits, isn't it? You know, I suppose as Muslims, we pray 5 times a day. At the moment, we're in sort of coming towards the first 10 days of Ramadan being complete. You know, so there's a lot of activity, but there's a lot of spirituality, and there's a lot of focus on these things. But I suppose it's outside of this as well to continue that sort of stuff that uplifts oneself.
Yes. And I think it's still being open to those, even if they're small moments of joy that can have a lot of consolation in them. Whether it's, you know, the bird song first thing in the morning, or the you know, buds coming you know, growing on the trees that have been bare. I think going outside and connecting with nature can be a really powerful medicine, particularly when you're grieving. And it's something that we do say to people in terms of that self-care. Just, you know, if you need some time out, then take it for yourself. Go out for 10 minutes, get some fresh air, find somewhere to sit and slow your breathing down, bring your shoulders down if they're getting tense and up near around your ears, and you know, don't be afraid to say no if you're grieving, and you need that time out, or whatever it is, you need a rest, you need a sleep. When you're grieving, you're allowed.
Yeah. I think, and it's such a poignant point you're making there, is that whatever's going on, it's having gratitude, having a grateful heart, and sort of just
Mm-hmm.
appreciating whatever small little thing that might be there, just taking a moment to appreciate it. One of our viewers has just asked, Farhan Akram is just asking, is there any way that we can volunteer uh, with the Marie Curie Center Hospice? Any
There
other
is
opportunities?
indeed. Yes, absolutely. There's always opportunities to volunteer for Marie Curie. That's a wonderful thought. Thank you. Again, if you gave the Marie Curie Hospice a call on the main switchboard number, which is 01912191000, and asked to talk to somebody about that, we'd be glad to explore options with you.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll get that number up as well in just a moment. Stillness Speaks is saying, yeah, we are told by God to ponder over nature and to connect with Him 5 times. Praying is a very meditative practice. Yeah, it's sort of instilled within sort of that faith element of being Muslim, and it's definitely there. So thank you, Stillness, for sharing. And again, we'll get that number up for you in just a moment as well, for getting involved and volunteering. And that's yeah, Farhan, it's an insightful thought of being able to share and to give from yourself what you can. And again, it's a very rewarding and humbling thing to be able to do as well. There we go. Contact Lynn Albert, lead AHP, on 0191. Yeah, the number's up there. So yeah, you can see that, ladies and gentlemen, on the messages. So have a look. If you are interested in volunteering, by all means, get in touch. And if you yourself are going through something like this support is there and it's available for you from the Marie Curie Hospice. Yeah, just any sort of final comments then, Louise, that you may have?
Well, I mean, it's been wonderful talking with you this evening. Thanks so much, Wajid. We've been really keen to reach out into the community and just for people to know that we are there. It's not the case that services are all overwhelmed. There is somebody who can listen and support and understand if you need.
Yeah, and it's about using what resources we have, and using them in the best way that is possible. And I think we're very blessed in the UK to have an NHS, and there are many parts to it. There's so much functionality to it. Walaikum assalam, Isha. Thank you for joining. And it's about just being able to do that. Stillness is saying, thank you, Louise, for connecting. Much appreciated. And I think,
thanks so much.
Yeah, and Farhan said as well, thank you for giving us an awareness. Thank you for talking about this. Complex Films is saying, thank you for talking about this. Because it is something that, it varies for everybody. It varies for everybody. It's a reality, like you said, for everyone as well. But yeah, so thank you very much, Louise, for your time this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure. It has, and I'm sure our listeners and our viewers have all had some great benefit from understanding what's there in order to do that. And thank you very much. And so, just again, if you just give us the details for Saudi English, thank you for your time. God bless you all. Thank you. So just tell us where the hospice is again, and any other details for getting in touch.
We're in Newcastle upon Tyne in the West End. Just off Elsick Road, off Marie Curie Drive. We have a drive named after us.
Yeah, that's how awesome the charity is and the work is, and it's great. And there's also a charity shop on the West Road as well. So if you are donating stuff, do donate there as well. All of that money then goes into supporting the work of that charity as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, on that note, I just want to say thank you all very much for joining us this evening with e-reminders, myself, Wajid Hussain, and our special guest, Louise Bowen from the Marie Curie Hospice. And it's been an absolute pleasure and insightful and a privileged conversation to have in this particular way. And thank you all very much for tuning in. And I look forward to catching up with you. I'll be catching up with you on the Baker Broadcast Show on Monday. Otherwise, I will see you all next Wednesday as well. And on that note, thank you very much, Louise.
You're most welcome. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.